Human, you will breed us the easy way or the hard way. Choose. Commander Wren's ultimatum echoed through Earth's communication channels, sending shockwaves of fear and disbelief across the planet. The Benzite invasion fleet loomed in Earth's orbit, their massive ships casting ominous shadows over major cities. Led by the formidable female alien warrior, Commander Wren, the Benzites had arrived with a singular purpose: to save their dying species using human genetic material. Nicholas Jenkins, a 28-year-old geneticist, found himself thrust into the center of this interstellar crisis. As he entered the secret government facility, his mind raced with questions. Why had he been summoned? What did these aliens want? The facility buzzed with frantic activity. Military personnel rushed back and forth, their faces etched with concern. Scientists huddled over computers, analyzing data streaming in from the alien ships. Nicholas was quickly ushered into a high-security lab, where he was tasked with analyzing Benzite biology. Hours of intense study revealed a startling truth. The Benzites were an all-female race teetering on the brink of extinction. A genetic defect had rendered them infertile, threatening to wipe out their entire species within a generation. Earth had been chosen as their target after the Benzites intercepted human broadcasts, determining that humans were genetically compatible with their species. As Nicholas worked, Earth's military attempted to strike the Benzite ships. The attack failed spectacularly, demonstrating the aliens' overwhelming technological superiority. Missiles were swatted away like insects, and fighter jets were disabled mid-flight. The message was clear: resistance was futile. Commander Wren, imposing in her alien battle armor, landed with a contingent of Benzite warriors. She demanded to meet with human representatives. Nicholas, due to his newfound expertise in Benzite biology, was selected as part of the diplomatic team. The first meeting was tense. Wren's piercing gaze swept over the human delegation, her alien features both beautiful and terrifying. She explained their dire situation without emotion, stating that Benzite survival depended on breeding with human males. Her ultimatum was chilling. Earth could either cooperate willingly, providing volunteers and genetic samples, or the Benzites would forcibly abduct and breed with human males. Nicholas found himself strangely drawn to Wren. Despite the circumstances, he couldn't help but admire her strength and determination. This attraction left him conflicted and confused. The human delegation retreated to deliberate, leaving Nicholas torn between his duty to humanity and his inexplicable feelings for the alien commander. Earth's leaders fiercely debated their limited options, weighing the costs of resistance against the price of cooperation. In his lab, Nicholas worked tirelessly, searching for an alternative solution. He pored over genetic data, hoping to find a way to help the Benzites without compromising humanity's freedom. As he worked, a message arrived. Wren wanted to speak with him privately. Their clandestine meeting revealed a different side to the alien commander. Wren spoke of her personal stake in the mission, the weight of her species' survival resting on her shoulders. For a moment, her warrior facade cracked, hinting at softer feelings beneath. As Earth's deadline to respond rapidly approached, Nicholas found himself at the center of a cosmic dilemma. The fate of two species hung in the balance, and his decisions could shape the future of both humans and Benzites. With time running out, Nicholas knew he had to find a solution, one that could satisfy both sides and prevent a catastrophic conflict. The choice was clear: breed or face annihilation. But perhaps, with his knowledge and growing connection to Wren, Nicholas could forge a third option, one that could save both species without losing humanity's essence in the process. Nicholas took a deep breath, his mind racing with the implications of Commander Wren's ultimatum. He knew that time was of the essence, and Earth's response would shape the future of both species. As he left the meeting room, he was immediately pulled aside by General Hawthorne, the head of Earth's military response team. "Jenkins, we need you in the war room now. The world's leaders are gathering for an emergency summit, and your expertise is crucial," the general said, his voice tight with tension. Nicholas nodded, following the general through a maze of corridors. The facility had transformed into a hive of activity, with diplomats, military personnel, and scientists from around the globe converging to address the Benzite crisis. As they entered the war room, Nicholas was struck by the gravity of the situation. Holographic displays showed the Benzite ships looming over major cities, their alien designs a stark reminder of the power imbalance between the two species. World leaders, some present in person and others attending via secure video links, sat around a massive table, their faces etched with concern. Dr. Jenkins, the U.S. president addressed him, "You've had the most direct contact with the Benzites and have studied their biology. What can you tell us about our options?" Nicholas stepped forward, keenly aware of the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He began to explain his findings, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "The Benzites are facing a genetic crisis that threatens their entire species," he said, bringing up detailed diagrams on the holographic display. "Their all-female population is rapidly becoming infertile due to a complex genetic defect. They've identified human DNA as a potential solution to their problem." As Nicholas delved into the scientific details, he could see a mix of fascination and horror on the faces of the assembled leaders. He explained the compatibility between human and Benzite DNA and the potential consequences of both cooperation and resistance. "If we refuse to help," he concluded, "the Benzites have made it clear they'll take what they need by force. Their technology far surpasses ours, and any military action would likely result in significant human casualties." The room erupted into heated debate. Some leaders argued for immediate military action, while others pushed for diplomatic solutions. Nicholas listened intently, his mind already racing ahead to potential alternatives. As the summit continued, reports began flooding in of Benzite warriors appearing in major cities worldwide. News footage showed the alien beings, tall and imposing in their advanced armor, walking among crowds of stunned humans. Panic spread like wildfire, and isolated incidents of violence erupted as some humans attempted to confront the alien scouts. Nicholas watched the chaos unfolding on the screens, his heart heavy. He knew he had to find a solution, and fast. Excusing himself from the war room, he made his way to the makeshift lab that had been set up for him. For hours, Nicholas pored over genetic data, running simulation after simulation. His eyes burned from staring at screens, and his fingers flew over holographic keyboards as he tested various combinations of human DNA and Benzite genetic material. Just as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, a simulation yielded promising results. Nicholas sat up straight, his fatigue forgotten as he double-checked the data. His heart raced with excitement as he realized he might have found a solution. "This could work," he muttered to himself, refining the simulation. A modified virus as a delivery system combined with specific human DNA sequences, it could potentially cure the Benzite genetic defect without requiring mass breeding. Nicholas quickly compiled his findings and sent a message requesting a private meeting with Commander Wren. As he waited for a response, he rehearsed his explanation, knowing that this could be the key to preventing a catastrophic conflict. To his surprise, Wren agreed to meet him alone at a neutral location, a decision that raised eyebrows among both humans and Benzites. Nicholas made his way to the designated meeting point, a small conference room in a secured area of the facility. As he entered, he saw Wren standing by the window, her alien features silhouetted against the night sky. She turned to face him, her piercing gaze filled with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "You said you have a proposal, Dr. Jenkins," Wren said, her voice carrying a hint of impatience. "I hope for your species' sake that it's a reasonable one." Nicholas nodded, activating a holographic display to show his findings. "Commander, I believe I've found a way to cure the genetic defect affecting your people," he began, launching into a detailed explanation of his discovery. As he spoke, he noticed a change in Wren's demeanor. Her initial skepticism gave way to genuine interest, and she began asking probing questions that demonstrated her own deep understanding of genetics. "This method would require far fewer human donors than your original plan," Nicholas explained, "and it could be administered voluntarily without the need for forced breeding." Wren's expression softened slightly. "If this works, Dr. Jenkins, it could save my people without resorting to measures that would undoubtedly lead to conflict with yours." As they delved deeper into the scientific details, Nicholas found himself drawn into a real dialogue with the alien commander. For a moment, the tension of their circumstances faded, replaced by a shared excitement over the potential breakthrough. Wren began to open up, revealing more about the desperate situation facing her species. "You must understand, Dr. Jenkins," she said, her voice tinged with a vulnerability he hadn't heard before. "I carry the weight of my entire species' future. If I fail—" Nicholas felt a surge of empathy. Despite the vast differences between them, he could see the burden of leadership etched in Wren's features. He was about to respond when an urgent message flashed on his communication device. His blood ran cold as he read the report. A group of human extremists had attacked a Benzite scouting party, resulting in the deaths of several alien warriors. He looked up to see Wren receiving the same information, her face hardening into a mask of fury. "This is unacceptable," Wren snarled, her earlier openness vanishing. "I must respond to this aggression." "Wait," Nicholas pleaded, his mind racing. "Please, give me more time. Let me present this solution to Earth's leaders. We can prevent further bloodshed on both sides." Wren glared at him, clearly torn between her duty as a commander and the potential of the solution he offered. After a tense moment, she spoke. "You have 48 hours, Dr. Jenkins," she said, her voice cold. "If a satisfactory agreement isn't reached by then, I will have no choice but to begin forcible abductions of human males. The survival of my species depends on it." As Wren turned to leave, Nicholas called out, "I'll do everything in my power to make this work, Commander. I promise." She paused at the door, looking back at him with an unreadable expression. "For both our sakes, I hope you succeed." With that, she was gone, leaving Nicholas alone with the weight of two species' futures on his shoulders. Wasting no time, Nicholas gathered his research and raced back to the global summit. He knew he had to navigate the complex political landscape and convince skeptical world leaders that his solution was humanity's best hope for survival and independence. As he approached the doors to the war room, Nicholas took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. The next few minutes could determine whether Earth faced a peaceful resolution or a devastating interspecies war. With persistence in his eyes, he pushed open the doors and stepped inside, ready to present his case to the assembled world leaders. Nicholas took a deep breath and pushed open the doors to the war room. The cacophony of heated debate immediately washed over him as he stepped inside. World leaders, military generals, and scientific advisors were engaged in intense discussions, their voices rising and falling like turbulent waves. As Nicholas made his way to the center of the room, he caught snippets of conversation that highlighted the gravity of the situation. "We can't possibly agree to their demands," shouted one general, his face red with anger. "But we can't risk open conflict either," countered a diplomat, her voice strained with worry. Nicholas cleared his throat, drawing attention to himself. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach, "I believe I have a solution that could satisfy both our needs and those of the Benzites." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Nicholas activated the holographic display, filling the air with complex genetic diagrams and simulations. "I've discovered a way to cure the Benzite genetic defect using a modified virus carrying specific human DNA sequences," he explained, zooming in on a particular strand of genetic code. "This method would require far fewer human donors than their original demand, and it could be administered voluntarily." As Nicholas delved into the scientific details, he noticed a mix of hope and skepticism on the faces around him. The U.S. president leaned forward, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Dr. Jenkins, are you certain this could work?" she asked. Before Nicholas could respond, a commotion outside the war room drew everyone's attention. Screens around the room lit up with live feeds from major cities worldwide. Crowds had gathered in streets and squares, some holding signs supporting cooperation with the Benzites, others demanding resistance. In New York, a sea of protesters chanted, "No deals with aliens," while in Tokyo, a group wearing alien masks carried banners reading, "Peace through science." The French president shook his head, gesturing at the screens. "The people are divided. How can we make a decision when half the world wants peace and the other half is ready for war?" As if in response to his words, a new figure appeared on the main screen. It was Commander Wren, her alien features set in a stern expression. "Dr. Jenkins," she said, her voice carrying a hint of impatience, "your time is running out. My warriors grow restless. If a solution is not reached soon, we will have no choice but to take action. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Nicholas felt the weight of both species' futures pressing down on him. He opened his mouth to respond when a new voice cut through the tension. "I can vouch for Dr. Jenkins's proposal." All heads turned to see Dr. Eliza Rogers, a world-renowned virologist, striding into the room. Her presence commanded immediate respect, and Nicholas felt a surge of hope. "I've reviewed Dr. Jenkins's research," Dr. Rogers continued, moving to stand beside Nicholas. "The science is sound. With a dedicated team, we could develop and test this modified virus within the given time frame." Dr. Rogers' endorsement seemed to sway many of the skeptics in the room. Nicholas could see nods of agreement and hear murmurs of approval. But just as it seemed they were making progress, chaos erupted. A group of military generals, led by a grizzled man Nicholas recognized as General Hastings, suddenly moved towards the center of the room. "This is madness," Hastings bellowed. "We can't trust these aliens or this untested science. We must strike now while we still have the chance." Security forces rushed to restrain the dissenting generals, but the damage was done. The room had devolved into shouting matches and physical altercations. In that moment of chaos, Nicholas made a decision. He tapped his communication device, opening a direct channel to Commander Wren. "Commander," he said, his voice low but urgent, "we need to meet. Now, bring a small delegation to the summit location. This may be our last chance for peace." There was a pause that felt like an eternity before Wren responded. "Agreed, Dr. Jenkins. We will arrive shortly." As security restored order in the war room, Nicholas addressed the assembled leaders. "Commander Wren is on her way. We have one chance to prevent a catastrophe. I urge you all to listen with open minds." The next hour was a flurry of activity as preparations were made for the historic meeting. Security perimeters were established, protocols were hastily drawn up, and the world's media converged on the summit location. Nicholas stood with a small group of world leaders, and Dr. Rogers as Commander Wren's shuttle touched down. The sleek alien craft settled on the landing pad with barely a sound, its hull gleaming in the afternoon sun. The shuttle's door opened, and Commander Wren emerged, flanked by 4 Benzite warriors. Their advanced armor and weapons were impossible to miss, a clear reminder of the power imbalance between the two species. As Wren approached, Nicholas stepped forward to meet her. He could feel the eyes of the world upon them, knowing that this moment could determine the fate of both their species. "Commander Wren," Nicholas said, inclining his head in greeting, "thank you for coming. We believe we have a solution that could benefit both our peoples." Wren's piercing gaze swept over the assembled humans before settling on Nicholas. "For your sake, Dr. Jenkins, I hope you're right." The delegations moved into a hastily prepared conference room. Nicholas and Dr. Rogers took turns explaining their proposal in detail, outlining the two-phase approach that would minimize risks and allow for careful monitoring. As they spoke, Nicholas watched Wren's reactions carefully. He noticed a subtle shift in her demeanor, a softening around her eyes that gave him hope. When they finished their presentation, Wren was silent for a long moment. The tension in the room was palpable as everyone waited for her response. Finally, she spoke. "Your proposal has merit," Wren said, her voice measured. "I will need to consult with my scientific advisors before making a final decision." She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I will return shortly with our answer." As Wren and her delegation departed, Nicholas felt a mix of hope and anxiety. They had done all they could. Now, all that remained was to wait. The next hour felt like the longest of Nicholas's life. Reports came in that the attempted military coup had been fully suppressed, which strengthened the position of those advocating for a peaceful solution. Finally, Wren's shuttle returned. The Benzite commander strode back into the conference room, her face unreadable. The room fell silent as Wren took her place at the head of the table. Nicholas held his breath, acutely aware that the future of both species hung on her next words. Wren's eyes locked with Nicholas's for a moment before she began to speak. "After careful consideration, Wren began, her voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. "We have decided to accept your proposal, Dr. Jenkins." A collective exhale swept through the assembled humans. Nicholas felt a surge of relief wash over him, but he knew this was just the beginning. Ren continued, her eyes locked on Nicholas. However, we will be closely monitoring the progress of this genetic solution. Any setbacks or signs of deception will result in immediate termination of the agreement. The U.S. President stepped forward, extending her hand to Ren. On behalf of humanity, we accept these terms and look forward to a peaceful resolution. As Ren clasped the president's hand, cameras flashed, capturing the historic moment. Nicholas caught Dr. Rogers' eye, sharing a silent nod of triumph. In the days that followed, a flurry of activity consumed the newly established research facility. Nicholas and Dr. Rogers led a diverse team of human and benzite scientists, working tirelessly to refine the modified virus. The facility buzzed with a mix of alien and human languages, creating a symphony of scientific collaboration. Nicholas found himself marveling at the benzite technology, far more advanced than anything he had seen before. During a late-night research session, Nicholas looked up from his microscope to find Ren observing him. Her alien features were softened by the blue glow of the holographic displays. "Your dedication is admirable, Dr. Jenkins," Ren said, moving closer to examine his work. Nicholas smiled, feeling an unexpected warmth at her compliment. "Please, call me Nicholas. And I could say the same about you, Commander. You've taken a significant risk trusting us." Ren's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer. "Perhaps we are not so different, Nicholas, both willing to take risks for the greater good of our people." As they worked side by side, Nicholas found himself sharing stories of his childhood, his journey into science, and his hopes for the future. To his surprise, Ren reciprocated, revealing glimpses of benzite culture and her own path to leadership. Weeks passed, and progress on the virus was steady. The first phase of human volunteers arrived, their genetic material carefully harvested and integrated into the developing treatment. Global media swarmed the facility, broadcasting daily updates that captivated audiences worldwide. Nicholas noticed a shift in public opinion as humans began to see the benzites as more than just invaders. Cultural exchange programs sprang up in major cities, with benzite art exhibitions and language classes becoming unexpectedly popular. However, not everyone embraced the newfound cooperation. Small but vocal groups of protesters gathered outside the facility, their signs decrying what they saw as a betrayal of humanity. As Nicholas watched the protesters from a window, he felt Ren's presence beside him. "Your people are passionate," she observed, her tone neutral. Nicholas sighed. "Change is never easy, but I believe most humans want peace just as your people do." Ren's hand briefly touched his shoulder, a gesture that sent an unexpected jolt through Nicholas. "Then we must ensure this treatment succeeds," she said softly. Their moment was interrupted by an urgent call from the laboratory. Dr. Rogers' face appeared on a nearby screen, her expression grave. "Nicholas, Ren, we have a problem," she said, her voice tight. "The virus is showing instability in living benzite tissue. It's breaking down faster than we anticipated." Nicholas felt his stomach drop. He looked at Ren, seeing the mix of disappointment and anger flashing across her alien features. "How long to correct this?" Ren demanded, her earlier softness vanishing. Dr. Rogers shook her head. "Weeks, maybe months. We need to start over with a new approach." As Ren turned away, her body rigid with tension, Nicholas made a split-second decision. "What if we tried a direct genetic transfer?" he asked, causing both women to stare at him in shock. "You mean—" Dr. Rogers trailed off, her eyes widening. Nicholas nodded, his heart racing. "Yes, I volunteer to be the first human subject." Ren whirled back to face him, her alien eyes unreadable. "You would risk yourself in this way?" "It's the fastest way to prove the concept," Nicholas said, meeting her gaze steadily. "And it's the right thing to do." As news of Nicholas's decision spread, the facility became a hive of frenzied activity. A young benzite warrior named Lyra stepped forward as the alien volunteer, her bravery matching Nicholas's own. On the day of the procedure, Nicholas lay on a biobed, his body coursing with a cocktail of drugs, designed to prepare his genetic material for transfer. Beside him, Lyra's alien form was a stark reminder of the stakes involved. Dr. Rogers stood over them, her face masked but her eyes betraying her anxiety. "Are you both ready?" she asked. Nicholas and Lyra nodded in unison. As Dr. Rogers raised the injector, a piercing alarm shattered the tense silence. "Security breach!" a voice boomed over the intercom. "Armed intruders in the facility." Through the laboratory's windows, Nicholas could see chaos erupting in the corridors. Wren's voice crackled over the communication system, barking orders to a mix of human and Benzite security forces. The door to the laboratory burst open, revealing Wren herself, her alien weapon drawn. "Protect them at all costs," she commanded the guards flooding in behind her. Her eyes met Nicholas's for a brief, intense moment. As the sounds of conflict grew nearer, Dr. Rogers looked to Wren. "Commander, we need to start now or never." Wren nodded grimly, taking up a defensive position by the door. "Do it," she ordered. As Dr. Rogers began the delicate process of genetic transfer, Nicholas closed his eyes, feeling the burn of the injections. The fate of two species now rested in his very DNA, even as the facility shook with the sounds of battle drawing ever closer. Nearer, Nicholas closed his eyes, feeling the burn of the injections. The fate of two species now rested in his very DNA, even as the facility shook with the sounds of battle drawing ever closer. Suddenly, the room erupted into chaos as a massive explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the faces of Dr. Rogers and her team. Nicholas's eyes snapped open, his vision blurry from the drugs coursing through his system. "We've lost main power?" Dr. Rogers shouted, her hands moving swiftly over the control panel. "Switching to backup generators. We can't stop now." Through the haze of pain, Nicholas turned his head to see Lyra on the adjacent biobed. The Benzite warrior's alien features were contorted in discomfort, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the flashing emergency lights. Commander Wren's voice crackled over the intercom, barely audible above the din of battle. "Human extremists have breached the inner perimeter. All personnel, hold your positions." Nicholas gritted his teeth as another wave of agony washed over him. He could feel his modified genetic material being extracted, a sensation unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was as if his very essence was being pulled apart and reassembled. Outside the sealed medical chamber, the sounds of energy weapons and traditional firearms echoed through the facility's corridors. Commander Wren, her alien armor scorched and dented, led a mixed team of human and Benzite security forces in a fierce firefight. "Protect the medical chamber at all costs," Wren ordered, her voice carrying over the cacophony of battle. She ducked behind a fallen piece of equipment as a barrage of bullets peppered the wall behind her. Inside the chamber, Dr. Rogers worked feverishly, her brow slick with sweat. "Nicholas, Lyra, your vital signs are fluctuating. I need you both to stay with me." Nicholas tried to respond, but his words came out as a strangled gasp. He could see Lyra's body convulsing on the biobed next to him, her alien physiology struggling to accept the human genetic material. Suddenly, a deafening explosion shook the facility to its core. The lights in the medical chamber went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. For a heart-stopping moment, the only sound was the ragged breathing of Nicholas and Lyra. "No, no, no!" Dr. Rogers' voice cut through the darkness. "We're losing them!" The backup generators hummed to life, bathing the room in a dim red glow. Nicholas's vision swam as he saw Dr. Rogers and her team scrambling to stabilize the equipment. Outside, Commander Wren made a split-second decision. "All Benzite warriors, converge on my position," she commanded. As her soldiers gathered around her, she activated a device on her wrist. "We're creating a force field around the medical chamber. It's our only chance to protect the procedure." A shimmering energy barrier sprang to life, enveloping the medical chamber in a protective cocoon. Wren knew this action left her and the human security forces more vulnerable, but the success of the experiment was paramount. As the force field stabilized, a group of heavily armed extremists pushed their way into the corridor. At their head was Victor Hargrove, his face a mask of fury and dedication. "There's the alien scum," Hargrove bellowed, raising his weapon, "and the human traitors who protect them." Wren stepped forward, her alien features set in dogged perseverance. Stand down, Hargrove. You don't understand what's at stake here. I understand perfectly, Hargrove snarled. You're trying to contaminate humanity with your alien filth. The two leaders charged at each other, their conflict a microcosm of the larger struggle between cooperation and isolation. Wren's alien strength and agility clashed with Hargrove's military training and raw human power. Inside the medical chamber, Nicholas felt his body going into shock. Every cell seemed to be on fire as the experimental process reached its critical phase. Through the haze of pain, he could hear Dr. Rogers' urgent voice. Something's happening, she said, her tone a mix of concern and excitement. The genetic transfer, it's not just one way. Lyra's DNA is integrating into Nicholas's genome. Nicholas tried to process this information, but his mind was overwhelmed by the physical sensations coursing through his body. He could feel something changing at his very core, a transformation that defied explanation. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the chaos, the chanting of human voices. Outside the facility, a group of civilians led by Maria Santos had formed a human shield, their presence forcing the extremists to reconsider their violent approach. "We stand for peace," Maria's voice rang out, amplified by a megaphone. "We will not let fear and hatred destroy our chance for a better future." The unexpected support galvanized the defenders. Commander Wren, bleeding from a gash on her arm, pressed her advantage against Hargrove. With a series of lightning-fast strikes, she disarmed the former general and pinned him to the ground. "It's over, Hargrove," Wren said, her voice carrying a mix of exhaustion and triumph. As government reinforcements arrived to secure the facility, Dr. Rogers emerged from the medical chamber, her face pale but her eyes shining with excitement. "Commander," she called out to Wren, "the procedure, it worked, but there's more. We need to talk." Wren, limping slightly from her injuries, made her way to the chamber. As she entered, her eyes immediately found Nicholas and Lyra, both unconscious but stable on their biobeds. Dr. Rogers approached, her voice low and urgent. "The genetic transfer was successful, but it's created something we never anticipated. It's not just a cure for the benzites, it's a bridge between our species. The implications are enormous." Wren's multifaceted eyes widened as she processed this information. She moved closer to Nicholas's bed, studying his face intently. Even unconscious, there was something different about him, a subtle change that hinted at the transformation within. As Wren watched, Nicholas's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, human and benzite gazes locked, each seeing the other in a new light. In that silent exchange, both understood that everything had changed. The future of their species and their own intertwined destinies had been irrevocably altered. The first phase of their journey was complete, but the true challenges and opportunities of this new era were just beginning to unfold. As Nicholas regained consciousness, he became acutely aware of a strange tingling sensation coursing through his body. His vision sharpened, colors seeming more vibrant than before. He blinked, trying to focus on Dr. Rogers and Commander Wren, who stood nearby, engaged in intense discussion. "The genetic transfer was successful," Dr. Rogers explained, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. "But there are unexpected complications." Nicholas attempted to sit up, noticing a faint blue tinge to his skin. "What's happening to me?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Commander Wren moved closer, her alien features softening with concern. "Your body is adapting to the benzite DNA," she explained. "We didn't anticipate the transfer would be reciprocal." As Nicholas processed this information, he noticed Lyra stirring on the adjacent biobed. The benzite warrior's eyes fluttered open, her gaze immediately locking onto Nicholas. There was a moment of silent understanding between them, a shared experience that transcended species. Dr. Rogers approached Lyra, scanner in hand. "Remarkable," she murmured. "Lyra's fertility markers are off the charts. The procedure seems to have been more successful than we could have hoped." The moment was interrupted by a cacophony of voices from outside the medical chamber. Commander Wren's communicator crackled to life, relaying urgent messages from both human and benzite authorities. "We need to secure this facility immediately," Wren declared, her tone shifting from concern to command. The implications of what's happened here are too significant to risk any security breaches. As if to emphasize her point, a distant explosion rocked the building. Wren's eyes narrowed. "It seems some are not willing to wait for official channels," she growled. Nicholas swung his legs over the side of the biobed, fighting a wave of dizziness. "We can't let this descend into chaos," he said, his enhanced senses picking up the faint smell of smoke and the rapid heartbeats of those around him. Commander Wren nodded, activating her comm system. "This is Commander Wren. I am instituting a complete lockdown of the facility. No one enters or leaves without my direct authorization." As Wren coordinated the facility's defenses, Dr. Rogers continued her examination of Nicholas and Lyra. Her expression grew increasingly puzzled as she analyzed the data streaming across her screens. "Nicholas," she said, her voice low and urgent, "your DNA, it's not just carrying the cure for benzoate infertility, it's become a bridge between our species. The potential applications are staggering." Nicholas felt the weight of this revelation settle over him. He looked at his hands, noticing for the first time how the faint blue tint seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. "What does this mean for me?" he asked. Before Dr. Rogers could answer, the facility's main view screen flickered to life. The stern face of Admiral Thorne, Earth's chief liaison to the benzoate delegation, filled the screen. "Commander Wren," Thorne's voice boomed, "we demand an immediate report on the situation. Our sensors detected an unauthorized procedure and subsequent security breaches. The global community requires transparency." Wren stepped forward, her posture rigid. "Admiral, the situation is under control. We've made a significant breakthrough, but it requires careful handling. I request time to fully assess the results before making any public statements." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Request denied, Commander. The world is watching. We need answers now." As the argument between Wren and Thorne escalated, Nicholas found himself drawn to a nearby console. Without thinking, he placed his hand on the alien interface. To his shock, information began flowing directly into his mind, bypassing the need for visual displays. "Wren," he called out, his voice filled with awe and trepidation. "I can access the benzoate systems. I can understand them." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Nicholas. Wren approached him slowly, her expression a mix of wonder and concern. "This is unprecedented," she murmured. The moment was shattered by an alert from the security systems. Dr. Rogers rushed to a monitoring station, her face paling as she read the incoming data. "We have multiple breaches," she reported. "It looks like coordinated attacks from both human and benzoate extremist groups." Commander Wren's expression hardened. "They must be after Nicholas and Lyra," she said. "We need to move them to a secure location immediately." As Wren began barking orders to her security teams, Nicholas felt a surge of grit. He stood up, steadying himself against the console. "No," he said firmly. "I won't hide. We need to face this head-on. It's the only way to prevent further conflict." Lyra, who had been silently observing, spoke up for the first time since the procedure. "I agree," she said, her voice stronger than before. "Our bodies hold the key to saving my people. We cannot shy away from this responsibility." Commander Wren looked between the two of them, conflict evident in her alien features. Finally, she nodded. "Very well," she said, "but we do this on our terms." As they prepared to confront the chaos unfolding outside, Nicholas couldn't help but wonder about the long-term consequences of his transformation. The blue tint of his skin seemed to deepen, a visible reminder of the change within him. He caught Wren's gaze, seeing a mix of emotions swirling in her alien eyes. The facility shook with another distant explosion. Time was running out. Nicholas took a deep breath, feeling the strange new power coursing through him. Whatever came next, he knew that the future of both humanity and the benzoites would hinge on the decisions made in the coming hours. With a nod to Wren and Lyra, Nicholas stepped towards the door, ready to face a world that would see him as either savior or abomination. The true test of their audacious experiment was about to begin. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor teeming with chaos. Nicholas stepped forward, his newly enhanced senses overwhelmed by the cacophony of alarms and shouts. Commander Wren flanked him, her alien features set in dogged purpose. As they navigated the facility's winding passages, Nicholas felt a surge of vertigo. The world seemed to shift and blur, his perception altered by the benzite DNA coursing through his system. He stumbled, catching himself against the wall. "Nicholas?" Wren's multifaceted eyes studied him with concern. "I'm fine," he assured her, straightening up. "Just adjusting." They rounded a corner to find a group of human and benzite officials engaged in heated debate. Admiral Thorne's holographic projection loomed large, his face contorted with anger. "This is an outrage," Thorne bellowed. "We demand immediate access to the subject and all research data." A benzite diplomat, her skin a deeper shade of blue than Wren's, stepped forward. "We cannot allow our people's future to be dictated by human bureaucracy. The genetic material is ours by right." Nicholas felt a headache building as the argument intensified. Without thinking, he placed his hand on a nearby console. Instantly, information flooded his mind. Security protocols, communication logs, research data. He gasped, overwhelmed by the influx of knowledge. "Enough!" Nicholas's voice cut through the din, startling both humans and benzites into silence. "This isn't about ownership or control. It's about survival, for both our species." All eyes turned to Nicholas, many widening at the sight of his increasingly alien appearance. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I propose a compromise," Nicholas continued, drawing on the information he'd inadvertently accessed. "A joint human benzite genetic research council, overseeing all aspects of this project. Equal representation, full transparency." The room fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. Admiral Thorne's hologram flickered, his expression unreadable. The benzite diplomat's antennae twitched with interest. Commander Wren stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of her position. "Nicholas speaks wisdom. This is an opportunity for true cooperation between our peoples." Hours of intense negotiation followed. Nicholas found himself at the center of it all, his unique position as both subject and mediator proving invaluable. As the discussions progressed, a plan began to take shape. A neutral location was chosen, a small, uninhabited island in the Pacific Ocean. A state-of-the-art research facility would be constructed there, free from the political pressures of either human or benzite territory. As the details were hammered out, Nicholas felt a strange mix of relief and trepidation. He caught Wren's gaze across the room, seeing his own complex emotions mirrored in her alien eyes. Weeks passed in a blur of activity. Nicholas watched from the window of a transport ship as the island facility came into view, its sleek architecture a testament to the combined ingenuity of human and benzite engineers. Dr. Eliza Rogers met them at the landing pad, her eyes alight with scientific excitement. "Welcome to your new home," she said, leading them into the complex. "We've assembled the finest minds from both our species. The research possibilities are, well, they're beyond anything we've ever attempted." As they toured the facility, Nicholas couldn't help but notice the sidelong glances from both human and benzite staff. His appearance had continued to evolve, his skin now a vibrant blue, his muscles denser and more defined. He caught his reflection in a glass partition and barely recognized himself. "You're the bridge, Nicholas," Wren said softly, noticing his discomfort. "Between two worlds, two species. It's not an easy role, but it's a vital one." Nicholas nodded, grateful for her understanding. As they entered the main research lab, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was where it would all happen, the key to saving the benzite species and forging a new era of interspecies cooperation. Dr. Rogers began explaining the intricacies of the refined genetic treatment they were developing. Nicholas listened intently, his enhanced mind grasping concepts that would have been beyond him just weeks ago. Suddenly, an alert blared through the facility. Security feeds flickered to life on nearby screens, showing a series of coordinated attacks on benzite outposts across Earth. "It's Hargrove," Wren growled, her fists clenching. "He's resurfaced." Nicholas watched in horror as the feeds showed masked assailants, bearing the insignia of Humanity First, Hargrove's new extremist organization. The attacks were precise, clearly aimed at disrupting the fragile human-benzite alliance. As the facility erupted into frantic activity, Nicholas felt a familiar tingling sensation. He placed his hand on a nearby console and information flooded his consciousness. Security protocols, communication networks, defensive capabilities. It all became clear in an instant. "We need to coordinate a response," Nicholas said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "And we need to accelerate our research. Time is running out." Commander Wren nodded, already mobilizing her security teams. Dr. Rogers hurried back to her lab, persistence etched on her face. As alarms continued to blare and reports of further attacks poured in, Nicholas stood at the heart of the facility. He could feel the weight of two species' futures resting on his shoulders. The true test of their audacious experiment was just beginning, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Higher. Nicholas clenched his fists, feeling the strange new power surging through him. There was no time for further contemplation. Alarms blared throughout the facility as Hargrove's forces launched their assault. The island shook with the force of distant explosions, and the acrid scent of smoke filled the air. Nicholas sprinted down the corridor, his enhanced senses picking up the chaos unfolding around him. Commander Wren's voice crackled over the facility's comm system. "All personnel, battle stations. This is not a drill. Hargrove's extremists have breached the outer perimeter." Nicholas skidded to a halt as he reached the central command center. Wren stood at the helm, her alien features set in stubborn persistence as she coordinated the defense. A mix of human and benzite soldiers rushed to their positions, the tense atmosphere thick with fear and dedication. "Nicholas," Wren called out, her multifaceted eyes locking onto him. "We need to get you to the medical chamber. Your procedure can't wait any longer." Another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. Wren barked orders into her comm unit, dispatching teams to reinforce vulnerable points in their defenses. Nicholas felt a twinge of guilt at the thought of retreating to safety while others fought. "I can help," he insisted, but Wren shook her head firmly. "Your transformation is our best hope for long-term peace," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll hold them off. Go." Nicholas nodded reluctantly and sprinted toward the medical wing. As he ran, his body felt increasingly foreign. His skin tingled, rippling with strange sensations. He caught glimpses of his reflection in the polished surfaces of the corridor walls, startled by the increasingly alien features staring back at him. The medical chamber doors hissed open as Nicholas approached. Dr. Rogers and her team were already in position, their faces masks of concentration behind protective visors. "On the table, quickly," Dr. Rogers instructed, helping Nicholas into position. "We're entering the final phase of the procedure. It's critical that we stabilize your genetic structure now." As the medical team secured him to the table, Nicholas felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The room seemed to pulse and shift, his perception altering with each passing second. Monitors around him beeped and whirred, tracking the rapid changes occurring within his body. Dr. Rogers leaned over him, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Your body is undergoing unprecedented changes, Nicholas. Your genetic code is rewriting itself in real time, blending human and benzite DNA at a fundamental level." Nicholas gasped as a surge of energy coursed through him. His skin began to glow, bioluminescent patterns rippling across its surface. He could feel his internal organs shifting, adapting to a new hybrid physiology. Outside the medical chamber, the sounds of battle grew closer. The facility's advanced security systems engaged, filling the corridors with shimmering force fields and automated defense turrets. But even these measures seemed insufficient against the onslaught of Hargrove's forces. Commander Wren's voice echoed through the facility once more, tense but controlled. "All units, fall back to secondary defensive positions. Hargrove has breached the outer defenses. Repeat, Hargrove has entered the facility." In the medical chamber, alarms blared as Nicholas's vital signs spiked. His body arched off the table, muscles straining against the restraints. Dr. Rogers and her team worked frantically, adjusting parameters and administering stabilizing agents. "Hold on, Nicholas," Dr. Rogers urged, her eyes fixed on the fluctuating readouts. "We're almost there. Your body is reaching a critical point of integration." Nicholas's mind raced, bombarded by a flood of new sensations and abilities. He could feel the facility's systems as if they were extensions of his own body. Security protocols, communication networks, power distribution, all of it flowed through his consciousness. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The medical chamber's reinforced doors buckled inward, and acrid smoke poured into the room. Through the haze, Nicholas saw a figure step forward, Hargrove, wielding a crackling benzite energy weapon. "It ends here," Hargrove snarled, his face twisted with hate. "No more alien corruption of humanity." As Hargrove raised his weapon, time seemed to slow for Nicholas. He felt a surge of power unlike anything he had experienced before. His eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. With a thought, he shattered the restraints holding him to the table. Nicholas rose into the air, his body seamlessly shifting between human and benzite forms. Energy crackled around him as he faced Hargrove, whose expression of triumph had turned to one of shock and fear. "You're wrong, Hargrove," Nicholas said, his voice resonating with newfound power. "This isn't an end, it's a beginning." Before Hargrove could react, Nicholas extended his hand. The stolen benzite weapon flew from Hargrove's grasp, hovering between them. Nicholas could sense the weapon's instability, the energy core on the verge of catastrophic overload. With a gesture, Nicholas encased the destabilizing weapon in a shimmering force field of his own creation. The weapon detonated, but the force field held, containing the explosive energy that would have leveled the entire facility. As the light from the explosion faded, Nicholas remained suspended in the air, his form a perfect blend of human and benzite characteristics. The fighting in the corridors ceased as both sides witnessed this awe-inspiring display. Hargrove, his plan in ruins, fell to his knees. What are you?" he whispered, staring up at Nicholas with a mix of fear and wonder. Nicholas descended slowly, his feet touching the ground as he approached Hargrove. "I am the future," he said simply. "A future where our species—"
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.